I see you brought a bell.
It
and
is.
if I look down there, I can see you've got a whistle.
I have. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, go on then. So, so we're going to call this the Bells and Whistle episode.
Excellent.
You know, well, we're not actually going to call it that.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you what we're going to call the episode later on.
I'm not sure I like that.
You know what?
Jeopardy.
Yeah, a little bit of jeopardy.
Okay.
But isn't that what the bell's for? What are you going to use the bell for?
Bell. So at home, this means food's ready.
Yeah.
So I don't have to shout around the house. But here, it's the veto bell. So if I don't want to talk about what you're talking about, I'm just going to ring it and then we'll move on.
Okay. And
you can also use it.
Okay, great,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
And the whistle?
The whistle is the jargon whistle, or if I think you're talking crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you might, should we just make an episode where you're just blowing the whistle?
Yeah, just blowing the whistle.
Oh,
yeah.
there we go. There is the title. You see what I did there? By
Yeah.
accident. Maybe that needs a veto.
Okay.
So should we put that up there so it's in
Okay.
reach? Because I'm
Okay.
probably going to talk a lot of crap.
Okay.
But let's start. Let's start with kind of introductions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great to have you. Great to have you here. I'm not sure which episode this is going to be.
Okay.
But it's great. And so why don't you introduce yourself? Say how we met and maybe tell us a funny story.
Okay. I'm Sara Cass, Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at IFX Payments. And you and I, Simon, met 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 14 years ago.
Yeah, I'd list
Mid-teens.
Maybe I'll
A while ago.
Maybe I'll do the maths.
Okay.
It was at least 10.
At least 10.
Yeah.
When you were interim head of risk at Wellfirst, I
That's
believe.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We just started the business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now the funny story. Because I don't even know what you're going to say.
Okay, funny story. Funny story. Well, I'm in compliance, so we're generally not that funny. But this is funny on my scale.
Yeah.
So this is in one of the jobs that I had. I was on a call with a load of American lawyers that I'd not met before, talking about American regulation. Very, very serious. And it doesn't happen so much anymore, but it used to be you join a call and then you'd have to say your name.
Yeah.
And then when you join the call, it would say, blah, 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 has joined the call. And just at that moment, and I don't even know why, because I was sitting in just my office with just me there, I happened to say cheese. And then it said, Cheese has joined the call. And then for the whole conversation, they called me Mrs. Cheese. And I didn't correct them the first time. So they kept saying it. And after a few times, I thought, well, I look like an idiot if I correct it now. So I was Mrs. Cheese on that call. Then on every call for the following 3 years with that same group of lawyers.
So did the same thing happen at IFX? Because I remember when I met you at IFX again, everyone was calling you Cass, and I was thinking, who is this Cass person?
Yeah. No, that was me.
Oh, that was you. Okay.
That's because my name is Sara, no H, not Sarah, and I was just like, it's really annoying being both. And outside of work, most people call me Cass, and it's nice and short and easy.
What we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about kind of spirit and intent over simply following rules.
Okay.
And so we're going to call the title of this episode, What is the Point of Regulatory Compliance?
Okay.
So there we go. And so maybe we'll start off with a kind of actually quite a direct question. Your title is Chief Risk and Compliance Officer.
Yep.
And so kind of what does that, in reality, what does that kind of mean in terms of your kind of day-to-day responsibilities?
Well, day-to-day compliance in a FX and payments firm, financial crime obviously is king kitty, probably, in terms of the rules that are most apparent, the things that come up on a day-to-day basis. We're sending international payments. So I've got financial crime, then regulatory compliance, and then a risk function, which has only actually been there it's grown over the last couple of years. So it's those three things, basically.
Excellent. And then do you find that when you're kind of going through the application process, because obviously we've taken people through application process. You've been involved in many, I know. Do you think that actually when the regulators almost they mandate the appointment of an MLRO, they don't necessarily mandate the appointment of a risk officer. And do you think sometimes that leads to unintended consequences later on?
I think it could do, but I also think it's a bit of a tricky challenge for them. Because if you've got a small firm with only a couple of people and you mandate all these different things, you know, you can't have a business just with all these chief whatevers and no customers, no one doing any work. And I know some businesses do it differently. Some people have compliance but no chief risk officer. Some people have a chief risk officer but no chief compliance officer. I think as long as you're managing the risk, it doesn't really matter what the title is, to be honest.
How do you see the interaction between the people department, the risk department, the compliance department, and the business?
Well, I think you're all working. I think all of those departments are all working together all the time, from a compliance perspective and a risk perspective. You know, the people team are super duper important. Conduct risk, I know that was top of the pops kind of 10 years ago, wasn't it? Everyone was talking about conduct risk. But that's all to do with people and what they're going to do or what they're not going to do. Policies, when you've got things like SMCR, you know, the ownership of that, which doesn't apply to us as an e-money firm. But
we're going to talk about that a little in a minute.
Yeah. You know, who owns that? And I think especially in smaller firms, you know, is that something that sits with the people team? Is that something that sits with compliance? You've got things like conflicts of interest. All of those things involve compliance, risk, and the people team and the business.
Yeah. Do you think that EMIs need more or less rules?
I think they need different rules. But I do think they need more rules. I think they should be more aligned with the wider financial services industry so that the understanding of what's expected in terms of servicing your customers and how you should operate your business is clearer. But I don't think that having an infinite amount of rules is a good way to get people to do something either, because there's just too many and then people can't follow it. But I do think there needs to be some different rules well, I was going to say guidance, but the problem with guidance is that you don't have to do that.
I'm going to challenge you on that one. Obviously, guidance gives you the impression that, well, this is just a bit of guidance. Do it, don't do it. But our experience has been, you know, rules guidance, well, we expect you to follow the guidance. You know, particularly when we've kind of had interactions around wind-down planning, there's that whole guidance book, WDPG, and quite often it's, well, we publish the guidance, why aren't you following it?
Yeah, but that is guidance. And then there's other bits where there's like an article or a view, or they've come out with something, say they, guidance has been put out that's not, if it's not prescriptive enough, that's not that helpful either, because especially if you're in compliance, you've got to explain to the business why you have to do something. And if the words are vague or you're relying on, you know, I know I've spent time before talking to other people looking at, is it a semicolon? Is it a comma or is it a colon? Are we talking about a list or are we talking about two separate sentences that are together? You know, when you get down to that level, it's clearly, you know, it's not clear.
I think I'm going to blow that. Are we seriously talking about semicolons?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I suppose if you are drawn into kind of those kind of more technical discussions about whether or not you have to do something, you know, words like and or start to really matter, and also
that's what the legal is, what you have to do.
Yeah.
Compliance is what you should be doing.
Ah, yes. So, another question.
Okay.
Just because it's legal, does it mean it's compliant?
No. Definitely not. And that's been shown over and over again. You know, you get legal advice and then someone still gets hammered by a regulator for something, even though it was technically legal.
I mean, do you think? I mean, obviously, we're not going to go into any. We're not going to do any case studies today. But you know, in your kind of in your opinion, is it sometimes the case that, you know, firms will go out and get a legal opinion, and had they simply implemented what the lawyers told them to do, it would have been fine? But actually, sometimes firms go out and they get the legal opinion, and then they don't actually implement what the lawyers told them to do, and actually that's the problem?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to implement what they
Yeah.
what they say. It's just guidance again, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
from another person.
Yeah. It's just guidance.
I think you've always got to make the decision in any business, you know, on the basis of that business and what's going on there and what's happening. Yeah.
Okay. So another kind of question, because I've got to be very precise with the questions. I'm surprised that you haven't jargoned me yet.
Not yet. I'm easing you in.
Easing me in. So, if you could remove one rule,
yeah,
and create another one,
yeah,
which rule would you remove and which rule would you create?
Oh, that's a bit hard.
It is very hard, isn't it? And maybe
one specific rule or kind of a section?
Maybe, yeah. Actually, answer it the way you want to answer it.
I think there are some positives in this, but I would get rid of consumer duty and go back to TCF, because I think...
Can I blow that whistle, right? So...
No, you have to blow in.
So, TCF?
Treating customers fairly. I don't think that's that jargony. Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that one. I think consumer duty is quite tricky, especially for smaller firms. I think you can have a lot of metrics which people are producing because they need to comply, or that's how they think they need to comply with it, rather than it actually being valuable. And I think the principle of looking after your customers properly and not ripping them off and making sure they've got all the information that they should have is basic and common sense. And I don't think, this is my personal opinion, I don't think you need to have that many rules around it. But clearly it was put in for a reason, because of, you know, harms that were seen.
Yeah.
But I would probably get rid of it. I don't like the name either, because everyone always thinks it's just about individuals. But obviously micro-entities and charities come in. So I think the name, maybe it's just the name I'd get rid of.
Maybe. And so, and I think, do you actually, here's another question that, you know, do you think that, you know, regulations or regulatory interventions happen as a result, really, mostly as a result of bad behaviour? So that regulations tend to be brought in because, you know, 5, 6, 10 years ago, a group of individuals did things that weren't great.
Yeah.
And now we need to create some regulations about it to stop that happening.
Yeah.
Or create consequences for that.
Yeah. It's exactly, I mean, something will fail. People will lose money, you know, real normal people, not just numbers on a balance sheet somewhere. Yeah. And that impacts everybody, society, the wider economy. So it does make sense to put rules in. But I think sometimes I much prefer principles-based regulation, because I think that allows for more innovation, different types of businesses, and you can apply it more easily to what you're doing as long as you've got the right people there. If you've got people that are not very nice and want to rip people off, they're going to do that anyway. They're just not going to follow the rules. So, I much prefer principles-based.
Yeah. And then we talked a little bit about, well, at least you mentioned SMCR, Senior Managers Certification Regime. It doesn't apply to the payments sector. So another very precise question. You know, again, where you don't have these rules, how do you go about allocating responsibilities to your, if you like, senior management team in the absence of rules?
But in the absence of rules, you can look at some of the guidance, again, that's out. You know, there's useful templates, and I think you can take the good bits. So the principles, correct, like people should know what they're responsible for and what they're going to be held accountable for, especially in a senior position, and just put it in a table. It doesn't need to be reams and reams of paper. It just needs to be really clear to those people and to the business, this is who's responsible for this, and make sure you've got it in your, you know, documented as part of your governance work. You've put it through the board, you've got it there, and you can point to it.
Yeah, okay. Do you think that regulators should intervene and tell the senior managers of firms that violence is not acceptable in the workplace?
I don't think they should have to, because I think that, again, is common sense and a given. And I think there'll be a very small number that caused the regulation or guidance to be written. You know, most people, on the whole, do the right thing, aren't plonkers.
Yeah.
They're not going to go around having punch-ups in the office.
Yeah.
You know, the vast majority of people are just not going to do that. But it's the few people that do that cause problems for everybody else.
Yeah. And so, I guess one of the reasons why I mentioned that is because in terms of kind of, we're talking about spirit and intent versus rules, and how this came about was someone went on LinkedIn and said, well, which rule says that I've got to do this?
That was me, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And it seems to me that firms don't do anything unless there are rules that force them to do it, and then there are consequences back to individuals. And this is where, if you get, again, EMIs and payment sector seems to fall between two stools. In the banking environment, and even in the... Go on then.
I think fall between two stools is a bit of jargon, isn't it?
Okay.
We might have said that earlier as well.
No, well, you probably should have called me out that. You see, you didn't call me out soon enough, and then I just repeated the behaviour, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
what do I mean? Consequences, Simon.
Yeah, so there's got to be consequences. So I like the idea of this whistle. The blowing the whistle. I can't believe we did that.
I know. I didn't even think about that.
By accident. But okay, so what do I mean by falling between two stools? Is that as a result of not having a suite of rules around both non-financial misconduct and SMCR, Senior Manager Certification Regime, there aren't necessarily any personal consequences for senior managers in the payment sector. They're certainly not as clear as they are under SMCR, and so that's what I mean. There doesn't seem to be, you've got the same risks actually.
You've got the due skill, care and attention. You've still got that overriding principles, and that's what people actually get done for, right? You can always apply that to something that's gone wrong somewhere, and isn't it just about managing the risks in your business, all of them, including people having a punch up or people not knowing what their job is?
Yeah. Spirit and intent versus following the rules. I want to talk a little bit about APP fraud. I know that's one of your favourite subjects. I'm not going to ask you a question. I'm just going to say, well, the concept of spirit and intent versus following the rules, and then apply that to APP fraud or APP reimbursement. Kind of, what do you think? It's over a year, just over a year on.
Yeah.
Kind of, what do you think? I mean, has it made any difference? Really, is actually, if you wanted a question, that's the question that I want to ask. But do feel free to kind of talk a little bit about what you think about spirit and intent versus following the rules with respect to that subject.
Okay. Yes, I think it has made a difference, because when it was coming in, it forced businesses to invest in those controls, right? When people could see how much money you could instantly lose, potentially, if you had lots of APP fraud claims. So I think it did achieve that, in that firms did put more fraud controls in and think about it. Some maybe didn't, but firms largely did invest in that. I think there's been coverage, in the media. The general awareness has gone up a little bit, I would say, amongst the population of the UK. It's still not, lots of people still don't know about it, still don't know that you can, get your money back in these scenarios. So I think those bits have worked. In terms of rules and implementation, I think it was tricky, and I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of the kind of payment services industry.
Yeah.
I think it was tricky having rules coming from the PSR, because firms are used to looking at the FCA, that's the regulator, looking at what's coming out of there, and people weren't necessarily always reading what the PSR was saying. I think some of the rules around the actual kind of operational implementation were difficult to implement in short timescales, and not everybody necessarily did. And I don't think that part of it, the kind of operationalizing of it, has necessarily worked as they would have hoped when they kicked it off. I know that's not really an answer to the spirit and intent versus rules question.
So you asked me to ask you specific questions, and then you don't answer.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's what compliance people do.
Yeah. And actually, I'm just gonna grab the bell in advance, because you would definitely ring it, and I'm not expecting an answer to that question.
Okay.
Is kind of how many APP frauds have you seen?
Well, in the firm?
You're obviously. I'm not asking you that question for
Good.
real, right? In terms of, I
will say though, very low to very, very low.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's I would expect it to be very low to very, very low. In terms of the industry, so obviously you will be kind of staying on top of any media that leans into this subject, and also I think we've all got friends and family that have been victims of this type of fraud.
Yep.
What do you think the government and the banks could do more of to educate people around this subject?
I think it's probably getting it on the curriculum, to be honest. At school level, it should be everywhere so that nobody can not have heard about it. I don't think it's solely on the banks. I don't think it's solely on the government. I think it needs to be kind of a whole of society effort to make everybody aware of this. There's things like Stop Scams, who are doing a lot of work with the banks, with the government, with technology providers and telephone companies, and they're doing really cool, exciting stuff to try and get on top of it. But also that ultimately has to be paid for, and that again is something that's tricky. But I don't think it's on just one. It's got to be cross industry and across society. I don't think one person on their own can solve it, and I think it's more about awareness.
Yeah, and then Stop Scams. It's a great campaign, and also there's a nexus of, if you like, APP
you love that
fraud.
word.
I love the word.
That's the second nexus you've done.
Second nexus. There is. So risk management is about kind of looking for the interconnected nature of things, right? And I think that's plain English enough, so I don't.
You don't get the whistle.
I don't get the whistle for that. But I think again, nexus, and I'll try not to use that term again for the rest of this episode, between, if you like, cybercrime and APP fraud. And so as we kind of develop this idea of risk management and then accountability, how in the absence of rules, like prescriptive rules, there are no prescribed responsibilities like there are for banks and other firms where the SMCR applies. How do you go about saying, well, who in the firm is responsible for minimising the risk that our firm could be used as a vehicle for scamming people?
One person.
Or if it's not one person, maybe do both. So if you had to pick one person, who would it be? And then actually, let's be more realistic. It's probably a group of people.
It's a group of people.
Together, yeah.
I think it's the whole senior management of a firm, because it's the customers that are either going to be defrauded or are going to be fraudsters. So that's a first line commercial aspect. What can they do? For money to actually move in and out, that's operations. They're the ones that control that. For compliance and risk as second line, should be supporting that, advising, monitoring, and having that oversight. So I don't think you can say it's just one person, because it involves, your customers and money.
Yeah. So when people talk about the risk person or risk people, they're actually talking about everyone, right? Because everyone in a firm has a role in the risk management activities that go on a day-to-day basis. I think, do you think actually risk people and compliance people should make more of that and actually go on a campaign to advocate risk management as an activity rather than as a department?
Yeah, but I think it depends on the firm, but I think people are aware of that much more widely now than maybe in the past, and they, I would say, where I work, everybody knows that they have to control the risks. Everybody knows that they have to comply with the law, the regulations, the company policies, the risk appetite, any other guidelines that are put in place, and they're all well aware of that. So I think it depends on the firm.
Yeah. Okay. So
I also prefer to call it threat hunting rather than risk assessment.
Threat hunting.
Because it sounds more exciting.
It does, doesn't it? It's like threat hunting.
Like if you say identify the risks, that sounds boring already.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to do it. If you say, right, what do you want to do? And they say, I want to make £5 gazillion. You're like, right, what's going to stop you being able to do that?
Yeah. How many zeros are there in a gazillion?
Proper loads.
Loads. Proper loads.
Proper loads.
Proper loads.
If you say, right, well, what's going to stop you being able to do that? What are the threats to that?
Threats.
That just sounds better.
It does,
and I think you're more going to have a conversation around it, and then you just write them down, and then you've done your risk assessment. But if you say, I want you to do a risk assessment, everybody, whether they're groaning out loud or not, it just feels like another thing that you have to do. But if you put it as, what's going to stop you achieving where you want to get to, or is there anything in there the other way? Because sometimes you want to increase the risk you're taking.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you kind of without risk, there is no revenue. So there we go. So basically, anyone says regulatory compliance, anyone says risk assessment, everyone kind of, okay, we're going to go to sleep now. But yeah, maybe we should actually kind of completely rebrand.
Yeah.
Threat hunting.
Yeah.
And
I didn't come up with that, by the way. I heard somebody else say it, and I was like, that sounds much better.
We can give you the credit for that.
Yeah. Okay.
And so threat hunting, and then maybe we can rename the department as well to what we call it, the threateners.
The threateners.
The threateners. No,
hunters.
Hunters.
Hunters. The hunters department.
And actually, because that actually does bring it into this whole, the digital age, right? Threat hunters. I love that program, Celebrity Hunted. I don't know, little plug for Celebrity Hunted. It's great. It's a great.
Are they sponsoring you?
So no, do you know what? Maybe I should write to someone and say, look, not another risk podcast sponsored by Celebrity Hunters. But yeah, threat hunters. I really like that.
Money laundering. There's loads of cool sounding names and terminology and things like pig butchering.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not nice. But
it's not very nice.
There
but actually, Do you know what? That is right. That's absolutely right. Because actually, in order to get people engaged, you have to have headlines. And so, something like pig butchering. You put that. People. Oh, well, what's that?
Yeah.
And maybe we do another episode about pig butchering. But actually, that's what we're going to do. So after this, I think we're going to go and get some new jargon. New jargon. We're going to throw all the old jargon in the bin, and we're going to come up with a new language that is much more exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, good. When you came in today, was there anything that was kind of you thinking, do you know what? I really hope Simon asks me about this, or whether he asks me or not.
Yeah.
I want to get these messages across.
Well, we've probably already touched on it a bit. I would say words and language, especially in risk and compliance. There's loads of jargony, technical words, and I don't think they're needed. I think quite often in policies there's too many adjectives, You know, we just need to talk about what we're doing. This is what we're going to do. This is what we have to do. So must and should is very often used. This is what we have to do. This is what we could do. Just make it super duper clear. And the same when you're talking about, you know, can you do a risk assessment versus
Well, you're
what's
going
going
to
to stop you?
You're going to have to say that a bit louder.
Yeah. But, you know, what's going to stop you being able to get there? Just talk normally and then write it down as simply as you can.
So remove all the hyperbole.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Yeah.
And actually maybe just think about, you know, because a lot of people use this phrase, right? Talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. You know, I see some benefits in that, you know, using plain English, and I know you hate the word idiosyncratic.
I do, yeah.
Right? But, you know, I think there is a space for technical language. I mean, financial services is a technical discipline.
Risk and compliance are the translators. So the hunters and the translators. But when you're talking to the business, if I say, what are the idiosyncratic risks? Either they're not going to know what I'm talking about, which is most likely, and then you'll just get, I don't know, or they make something up, or in fact, they're not going to know what you're talking about.
No.
Or maybe they will and you'll get an answer, but more likely, they're not going to know what you're talking about. So you either get nothing, or, and this is more risky, and this is why I keep talking about plain language, is that if they don't understand what you're asking, you're not going to get the information that you need. And quite often people won't say, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So it's, if you use plain language and you can ask people to explain again, not like I'm 5, but, you know, if I'm like, I still don't get it, can you explain that to me again? I will always ask for a diagram. I need to see it in a diagram form. You know that about me.
Yeah, I love
diagram or a graph.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think the use of language is really important. And then it's on the risk and regulatory functions and others to translate that into whatever it needs to be. For there's ways that you talk to the regulator because you line it up with the regulation so it's really clear to them. So you do have to vary it for your audience. But I think within the business, you don't need fancy words. You need to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about and that we all understand, you know, we're all using the same word thinking it means the same thing.
Myth or truth with Sara Cass.
Okay. Innovation and compliance are inherently at odds.
Myth.
The more data we have, the less judgment we use.
Myth.
Independence matters more than influence.
Truth.
You can automate compliance.
Myth.
Governance stifles growth.
Absolute myth.
Well, great. Thanks very
Awesome.
much. Thanks very much,
That
Sara.
was so good.
Oh, that's
So
good.
Yeah,
I don't even
really,
have to
yeah.
justify
really good.
my myth or truth answers.
No.
Great.
You don't have to justify any of it.
Yeah.
Every compliance officer should have one.
Every compliance officer should have
Everyone should have one.
Everyone should have a whistle to kind of de-jargon and talk in plain English.
Yeah.
And so we used to have red and yellow cards a long time ago in a previous life. I think we're gonna wrap up. That was fantastic, Sara. Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me.
And hopefully you'll come back again and maybe join a panel or do something completely different.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, Simon.